What's up everyone, I'm Derek and welcome to my brand new channel Euro Superbike Life, where everything we do involves these beautiful European superbikes. In today's video we are going to be installing a 15-tooth front sprocket on this beautiful Aprilia RSV4 factory. So get yourself a drink, pull up a chair and follow along. Welcome back everyone. Before we get started, you might be asking, why would anyone install a smaller front sprocket on their bike? Well, the answer to that question is low speed maneuverability and acceleration. Now, there are some trade-offs. We are going to lose top end speed and fuel mileage. Now, this is a liter sport bike. I don't track it, so I'm not overly concerned about losing top end and losing gas mileage. It's by all intents and purposes, compared to other motorcycles, it's pretty much a pig anyway. So I'm not overly concerned with either of those two things. However, I am more concerned with low speed maneuverability, like I mentioned, and acceleration. So if you own this bike or any of the Italian bikes, you know that from the factory, their tuning and their throttle response somewhat sucks. Some are delayed, some are overly sensitive, and sometimes, most of the time, the tuning is just way out of whack. I will say that the RSV4 is probably better than the other two, than the 1199/1299 and the MV Agusta F4, whether it be the RR or just the base F4. Those two bikes, the throttle response and the fueling is absolutely garbage. This bike does not like to go slow. Again, if you own one or you've ridden one, you know what I'm talking about. The bike kicks and sputters and protests that it does not like going slow. While this bike does not do that, it is sluggish off the line from a dead stop. So if you're pulling away from a stoplight or a stop sign, the bike is terribly slow. It almost feels like it wants to bog down, believe it or not. Beyond that, once you get going, the bike is absolutely fine. So we are going to resolve that issue by stepping down one tooth and gaining some low speed maneuverability and some acceleration. One more point before we get started. One more point. On a scale of 1 to 10, 1 being super easy and 10 being, oh my God, I gotta stop. I don't even want to attempt that. I'm taking it to my dealer. This is probably a 1.5 or a 2, okay? So if you're feeling intimidated by doing this, I highly suggest that you stop what you're doing, because you probably shouldn't be working on a bike anyway, and take it to your dealer and pay the couple of $100 and have them do it. However, if you're handy with tools, you're used to changing your own oil and be it in your car or your bike or whatever, you're a DIYer, you won't have any problems doing this. So without further ado, let's get to it. All right, so here are the tools that you're going to need for this project. Let's go through them one by one. First off, we have an 8mm long socket, a 13mm long socket 3/8 drive, a 32mm socket 1/2" drive, some blue Loctite 1/4" extension, 10mm and 13mm wrenches, a regular 3/8 drive ratchet, two torque wrenches, so 3/8 torque wrench, 1/2" torque wrench, and a 1/2" breaker bar. That combined with a rear stand is all you're going to need. Okay folks, so we're here at the rear of the bike, and the first thing you want to do is you want to put the bike up on a rear stand. This job can be completed on the side stand here, but you really don't want to do that. You really want to use the best tools for the job, and the best tool for this job is a rear stand or a motorcycle lift if you're fortunate to have one. If the bike is on the side stand, it's leaned over and you have to sort of get in an awkward angle, and leaning over and hurt your back and just makes things more difficult. Also on the side stand, the bike is not as stable, so when it's on the rear stand, you can see the bike's not going anywhere, it's stable. We're going to place some torque on that rear nut to get it off, and you don't want to have to worry about your bike falling over when you're working on it. So do yourself a favor, get yourself a good rear stand. This is a Harris Racing stand that I inherited from a friend. I normally use Pitbull Racing, like you probably can't see it, but over there on the Ducati there's a Pitbull stand. So get yourself a good quality stand and you won't have any problems. Having said that, the first thing we want to do in this project is we want to loosen up this rear nut so that we can remove the chain and create some slack. So I'll grab my 1/2-inch breaker bar and a 32mm socket and we'll loosen up this nut. Okay, so I have my 32mm socket and my 1/2-inch breaker bar, and we're going to loosen up this rear wheel. Alright, we're all loose. Okay, so the next thing we want to do is we want to grab our 13mm wrench and loosen up this lock nut here on the chain adjuster. Okay, so we're just going to loosen this up here, and then we're just going to use our fingers to turn in the adjuster some here. We'll use our 10mm wrench when we go to reinstall everything and tighten everything back up on this adjuster, but right now we can just turn it in with our fingers and that will be fine. Okay, that should be good. Alright, so now what we want to do is we want to move the axle shaft forward to create some slack on the chain, and then we'll take the chain off. Okay, so all we want to do is we want to push on the rear tire, create some slack, and grab the bottom of the chain and just pull it towards you and rotate the tire. And there we go. And the chain is off. There we go. All right, let's move on to the front cover. Okay, so here we are at the front cover. We have 3 screws, 1, 2, and a third right here above the shift linkage that we're going to remove. You're just going to need an 8mm deep socket. I'm using a 1/4-inch drive and just an extension, a screwdriver type extension. They're really not super torqued, so you really don't need a ratchet. We're just going to remove those 3. Okay, so now we can see our sprocket here and the nut holding the sprocket in place. It's a 13mm, so basically what we're going to do is we're just going to loosen that up and the whole thing will slide right off. So let's get our ratchet and a 13mm socket. Okay, I have my 13mm socket, 3/8 drive. If you have air tools, you can use those too. It's not a big deal, it's not super torqued. So we're going to go ahead and spin this off, but you want to make sure that the bike is in gear. So push down, put it in gear, otherwise this thing is going to spin and you won't get it off. So let's take it off. All right, so now our sprocket will just slide right off. Voila! All right, so here is our removed 16 tooth front sprocket. My bike only has 1,200 miles on it, so this still looks really, really good, fairly new. But we're swapping it out for this one. This is our 15 tooth front sprocket. I don't know if you'll be able to see it, but it does say 15 right there. However, I digress. We're just going to install it in the same manner that we took it off. I forgot one thing, or 2 things technically, before I reinstall this. So in looking at this sprocket compared to the stock sprocket, you'll notice that there's a shallow side and a deeper side with the spacer. Now, if you have an RSV4 in a year or a 2.0 in a year, the sprocket installs with the deeper face towards the bike, i.e. in this manner. If you have a different Aprilia, it installs in the opposite direction in this manner. So FYI, just so you know, if you ever get one of these and you're confused as to which way it installs, RSV4s and Tuonos, this side in, other bikes, that side in. All right? The other thing, point 2, is when you're installing sprockets, front or rear, you should always install them in sets. Now, what is the set? The set consists of the front sprocket and the rear sprocket and the chain. These components should be replaced all at the same time. If you're replacing any one of them, you are supposed to replace the other 2. Reason being is, over time, after thousands of miles of riding, your teeth start to narrow on your sprockets, and they'll either start to hook over or what's called cupping. If you need to know what cupping is, or hooking, or worn sprockets, I'll put look at the image right up here, or do a Google search. But you do not want to place a new sprocket, front or rear, on your bike with a worn chain, or a worn brand new chain on your bike with worn front sprockets, particularly if they've started to hook or cup. That is a recipe for disaster. You really should not do that. Again, my bike only has about 1,200 miles on it, so all of these components are new. But if you have a bike that's, let's say, 7,000 to 8,000 miles and above, and you have not replaced your chain or sprockets, and you want to do this modification, i.e. Go down 1 tooth or up 2 teeth in the rear, always replace them in sets. Get yourself a set of front, rear sprockets and chain. If you have it doesn't really make any difference what bike you have, but if you have an Aprilia, AF1 Racing sells all of this stuff. They sell each sprocket individually. They sell this chain individually. They also sell everything as a kit. So get yourself a kit and replace it and do it all at once so that you're riding safely. The last thing we want to do is have your chain jump off the sprocket or break and cause yourself an accident, severe injury, or possible death. So we don't want any of that. We want everyone to keep riding. So again, do what you will, but however, replace everything as a set. Now again, I'll say again, my bike only has 1,200 miles on it. Everything is still basically new, so I can get away with this. If it had a few more thousand miles on it, I would replace everything as a set. Okay? So again, thick side in, and we're just going to install it the same way that we took it off. Okay, so we have the front sprocket back on with the chain on it. So now what we're going to do is I'm just going to take the bolt and clean it up a little bit here. It's not that bad. I really don't need a wire brush, but if yours is gunked up with Loctite or something, grab yourself a wire brush and just clean it off real quick. All right, so we got the front, the first washer on there, followed by the second, installed properly. Not this way, not this way, but this way. And it sits right in that groove. So, and now we're just going to put a little Loctite on here. I like to run mine around. Some people don't, but whatever. And we're just going to reinstall it. All right. So now we're just going to snug this up. Okay, so now we're going to grab our torque wrench and torque everything to specs. Okay, so we have my torque wrench here, 3/8 drive, torque wrench, nothing special. We're going to torque this down to 37 foot-pounds. I think the book or the torque specs is 36.8, but I'm not a torque Nazi, so it's getting 37. So again, make sure the bike is in gear, otherwise you won't be able to torque this. There we go, click, that's it, that's all. Now let's put the cover back on and then we'll move back to the rear tire. Okay, so next what we want to do is we want to grab our cover, our 3 screws, and some blue Loctite, and we're going to put a dab on each one of these screws Pretty simple. Put it back in the same way you took it off. Not a difficult task. All right, all torqued down. Don't get too crazy with the torque. It's just a plastic cover. I think the specs is like 14 or 16 inch-pounds or foot. I don't know, but I'm not a torque Nazi, particularly when it comes to just a cover here. So I just put it on hand tight with some blue Loctite. Don't go crazy, all right? All right, let's move to the rear of the bike and we'll put the chain back on. All right, so we're going to reinstall the chain the same way we took it off in reverse order. So remember we removed the bottom half, so we're just going to put the bottom half on. Don't get your fingers jammed in there. Remember to take the bike out of gear, otherwise you won't be able to rotate the wheel. Just spin it forward. Voila, your chain is on. Now we just need to rotate this back, adjust out your chain adjuster to the point where you're close, then we'll adjust the chain properly and we will be done. Okay, got my socket, torque wrench. We are set at specs at about 88 foot-pounds, and let's torque this baby up. Just checking to make sure the other side slider hasn't popped out. There we go. And that is it. We are done with this project. Front sprocket swapped. Go out and enjoy your bike. If you found this video helpful, please click the like button at the bottom and subscribe. And I will see you guys next time. Thanks again.